College fantasy football week 1 is upon us. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF educator, back with John Lobb, the gridiron scholar, for our college fantasy football week 1 preview on the CFF Big Board, presented by the Rookie Big Board Podcast Network. As always, we have our best matchups of the week. We will preview the best college fantasy football games of the week. We'll talk DFS, we'll talk best bets, we'll talk sleepers, and we will certainly talk with John Lobb. How are we doing, my friend?
Matt, we have 5 straight days of nearly wall-to-wall college fantasy football. And college football, I'm going to the UConn game on Saturday with my family. I'm so fired up. There's already been games for over an hour tonight. Hendon Hooker has 3 touchdowns already, 2 rushing and 1 passing. I'm fired up. I'm going to be up way too late watching Penn State and Purdue. I can feel it in my bones. I'm ready to rock and roll, Matt.
No time to waste here. We are recording, just for the record here, we are doing our weekly live stream on Thursday night, so we have the early slate of games going on here. There also are games this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. It is week 1 of college football, and we're starting here with our marvelous matchup segment. All right, here. So for our marvelous matchup segment, we're going through the 6 best college fantasy football matchups of the week. We are not identifying these 6 best games to watch necessarily, but the 6 highest over-unders of the week, which we equate to the most college fantasy football action. Starting here, John, with SMU at North Texas. It is the Texas Lone Star State showdown that everybody wants to see. It's 68.5. It's Tanner Mordecai. It's Kamar Wheaton. It's Rashee Rice. It is SMU laying 11 points. Give us the breakdown.
Matt, first you said it. We know Alabama's going to score a lot of points, but they are a massive favorite. So we try to keep games within 15 to 16 points. We don't like the giant spread, so we eliminate those games because we're looking for fantasy goodness on both sides. SMU, fired up for this game. They are traveling to North Texas. Look at that over-under, Matt. 68.5. Tanner Mordecai is a must start. Rashee Rice is a must start. We have change at the tight end position, looking to see who's going to play and get targets for the Mustangs. Maybe it's Ben Redding. We're not 100% sure. Who's the second receiver? Jake Bailey, Dylan Goffney. We have to check for the Mustangs. Who's going to get targets there? So it's a very important game from college fantasy football perspective. In the backfield, it does not look like Kamar Wheaton. He's at the bottom of the depth chart right now, Matt. You and I highlighted him in our Devi show earlier in the summer. Go to Trey Sagers. He looks like the guy for now. Let's see how many touches he's going to get in that game, in this game. I love it. North Texas, Austin Oom. We saw him play last week. He played well. It wasn't fantastic, but he did put up fantasy numbers. He's home here as a huge underdog. I mean, and I actually play in a 3-quarterback league. If you've had an injury, and there's been some injuries at the quarterback position, home underdog in a 68 over-under, Austin Oon, you could do worse than him. I don't like any of the backfield. They're kind of running a backfield by committee. You could take a chance on Roderick Burns at wide receiver. But to me, Austin Oon is the most interesting player in this game on North Texas.
All right, the highest scoring game that is on the main DFS slate, and we'll get more into DFS later on, but certainly a game with lots of action, is going to be Houston at UTSA. The over-under here is 62. Still a very high over-under. Houston is laying just 4 points here. John, Clayton Tune and Nathaniel Dell are certainly leading the way for the Cougars, but don't sleep on Frank Harris and Zachary Franklin, another great quarterback wide receiver duo for the Roadrunners. 2 great group of 5 programs from last season, ready to carry that momentum through week 1.
This might be my favorite game on the slate. I love watching the Houston Cougars. They have an opportunity here, Matt, just like Cincinnati did last year. They could run the table. Look at their schedule, the conference that they're in. There's a couple games at the speed bump. Believe it or not, this is one of the speed bumps. UTSA is a good football team. I'm going to talk more about the Houston Cougars offense later in the show, foreshadowing. There's players that I like. Nathaniel Dell is the number one guy. It looks like Tayshaun Henry, the running back from Texas Tech. He looks like he's going to be the number one guy in the backfield, but I want to see more of it. Remember, Alston, who was the running back? The freshman last year, hurt himself. He's out for this season, and I can't remember his last name now. But they're starting running back who we like. What?
McCaskill?
Yes. Alston McCaskill's out for the year. So we got to see how the backfield shakes out. On the UTS side, you mentioned Franklin and Harris. No brainers. Brendan Bailey, Traylon Smith. Right now, who's at the top of the depth chart? It looks like Traylon Smith, but this could be a committee. We don't know. Maybe if you're desperate, put him in on your watch list. Let's see how the running back shakes out here. Joshua Cephas is a nice option for UTSA. Matt, I like the over in this over under 62. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think we're going to smash the over on this one. A really interesting matchup is going to be Louisville at Syracuse. Louisville's kind of known for being a high-octane offense, running the ball certainly through Malik Cunningham, but also pushing the ball downfield at times. And Syracuse is kind of known for being a run-first offense behind Sean Tucker. It's a really interesting over-under at 57, and Louisville's a 4.5 favorite.
I like Louisville here to smash, even though they're on the road. I just don't think Syracuse has the personnel and the offensive weapons to really compete here. You have Malik Cunningham, Matt, top 3, top 4 college fantasy football quarterback, dual threat star. Tyler Hudson is the wide receiver I think you're looking at for Louisville. Can he step up? They've lost some weapons at the wide receiver, and my heart is broken. Marshawn Ford is third at the tight end, but they also listed him as an H-back. So I think I know. It's going to be strange how they use him. Is he going to be in this Dabo Sweeney role? How many touches? I'm going to be watching this game. If I don't watch it live, I'm going to have to tape it because I'm very interested to see how they use Marshawn Ford in this game. Look, I'm not that interested yet in the running backs. Part of it is because of Cunningham, Matt. Cunningham's such a good runner. He's so good near the goal line. Until I see one running back who's going to get like 60% of the snaps and they're going to get, the majority of carries near the goal line, I'm pretty much staying away. I know there's a lot of people invested in this backfield. To me, it's very dangerous because Hooker has 2 rushing touchdowns tonight, right? People with Jabari Small are all, why couldn't one go to Jabari Small? Well, that happens for Louisville also. On the Syracuse side, it's really a 2-man offense, Matt. We talked about this in the summer. Garrett Schrader at quarterback and Sean Tucker at running back. I like them both. You can start them both in this game. They're both elite runners. Let's see if Schrader takes a step up in the passing game. But, Matt, I'm not touching wide receivers for Syracuse.
All right, next up we have BYU traveling to South Florida to play the USF Bulls. BYU is a 12-point favorite in this game, led, of course, by the dynamic Jaren Hall. But, John, rumors are that we could have players missing here at the wide receiver position for BYU. USF brings in new offensive coordinator Chad Morris to hopefully spice up an otherwise boring offense from 2021. It'll be interesting to see here what this new look Bulls team has in store for a maybe ailing week 1 Cougar squad.
I think Chad Morris is hoping for about 110% humidity in South Florida. Bring the boys from BYU and Utah into that scorching Southern Florida sunshine. And Matt, you kind of alluded to it. Gunnar Romney and Puka Nacau are both questionable. What I hear, it looks like both of them flew to South Florida. I believe the Cougars got on the plane today. I'm worried about Romney. Puka Nacau, I'll be honest, I benched him in some of my senior season-long leagues, Matt. It's too risky right now. Good news, Isaiah Rex looks like he's going to play. He doesn't have any injury designation. He's been in training camp, so that's very positive news. The wide receiver who's interested is Keanu Hill. He's the third receiver. Jaron Hall's going to complete passes. It's just a matter of who. I think Rex might be more heavily involved than people are expecting. Keanu Hill might be the guy in line to lead the receivers in targets. But at the end of the day, Matt, Christopher Brooks, the running back, this is in a situation to excel. BYU has one of the best offensive lines in the business. What you want to do is control the clock, keep your defense in that hot Florida sun off the field. I like Christopher Brooks a ton in this game. On the South Florida side, you mentioned change at offense coordinator. Let me just get 1 second. I want to pop up a screen. I like their offense should be better. The one player I'm really interested in is Jaron Magnum. Now, he was a little bit tight end dependent last year. Let's see how many carries and touches he gets. He might get an uptick in those and not as many touchdowns this year, but maybe we get more yardage. Jerry Bohannon, the quarterback from Baylor, is now in charge of the Bulls. And Xavier Weaver, who was dynamic and interested in COVID in 2020, he should be the top receiver for the Bulls.
All right. Memphis at Mississippi State. This is an over-under of 57. Mississippi State is carrying this over-under. They're 16-point favorites, and for good reason. Certainly returning Will Rogers in his third season as the quarterback for Mike Leach's air raid offense. That has been a formula for success in the past for Mike Leach. He certainly has Quatavius Marks on that offense, as well as a variety of wide receivers. And John, that's matching up against the Memphis offense that might look a little bit slower than what they've gone for in the past, but certainly Ducker is the player to identify there at the running back position.
And this is the first time in years, Matt, I don't have a Memphis wide receiver on a fantasy squad. I mean, I've been living in this Memphis wide receiver core for like 8 to 10 years now. They have been so good in college fantasy football. If people remember last year, Mississippi State and Memphis played in Memphis. It was one of the best games of the year, Matt. Memphis won that game. Remember, Calvin Austin had that strange type of return. Was he down, but the refs let him go? Calvin Austin basically won the game for Memphis. Mississippi State put up tons of points. Will Rogers is a must start. Jaquavius Marks is a must start. Sneaky wide receiver, Rufus Harvey. He's very sneaky in this game if you're looking for someone. The problem with the Bulldogs, they spread the ball around. Last year, Mekhi Polk ended up was the number one guy. We probably need 2 weeks to see how is it going to be Jaden Whaley, Thomas. I've been reading a lot about Rufus Harvey. We need some time to see how this Mississippi State offense shakes out. But obviously in an air raid offense, we like it. I agree with you. Drucker's the interesting guy on Memphis. Seth Hennigan is the quarterback who had a really nice freshman year, but I don't know who he's throwing to on Memphis right now. We've got to see how these wide receivers. Hey, historically, Memphis has popped up with good receivers. Let's see if they have one on the roster, but right now I'm not interested in any.
Our final top game of the week is an interesting one you might not expect. It is an in-state battle in North Carolina. No, it is not the pack. That's not the Wolf Pack. It is the North Carolina Tar Heels versus Appalachian State. over under of 56. And John, just a 1-point favorite for the Tar Heels here. A really interesting line. Vegas expects some fireworks, and I guess we should too.
Everyone wants to jump on this North Carolina offense, and I understand it. But there were some concerns. I don't think their offensive line played great last week. Appalachian State, my friends, at home, they're a nasty defense. They're not a top 15, but on a given Saturday with the home crowd, the Mountaineers are going to punch the Tar Heels in the face. I am a little bit concerned about Drake May. I actually took on Prize Picks, Matt. I took Drake May under 23 fantasy points. I think the young man is going to get hit by the Mountaineers defense in their front seven. The only guy I 100% love is Josh Downs. I just think he's a must start. He's too good. He's too amazing. The young running backs, Hampton and Petaway, let's see how they shake out. They just dominated last week. I picked up Hampton in 2 leagues, Petaway in 1. And you actually beat me to Hampton, I think, in our Kings Classic League, if my memory serves me.
Sure
Matt
did.
picked him up. I am not starting the running backs this week on the road against the Mountaineers. On the other side, there's 2 running backs. I think Nate Noel and Cameron Peoples-Jones, Matt, they might each get between 18 and 22 carries. If Appalachian State wants to win this game, pound the rock. Keep your defense on the side of the field, blitz the freshman quarterback of the Tar Heels, and just grind that clock. I love both those backs in this matchup.
Our Fantastic Four segment, where me and John both identify one quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and flex player each that will outperform expectations of the week. So not just the 4 best players, but ones that may not be on your radar here. John, we'll start here with your quarterback selection, Chandler Morris of TCU.
Matt, he is going to Colorado. But anyone who has watched Colorado in the last 4 years, they highlight Laviska Shenault had that one great season. I think it was 2018 now. It was a while ago. The Buffaloes have just fallen apart. I was reading that their entire secondary either transferred or graduated. They're starting only freshmen and sophomores. And I love Quentin Johnson. So as I was doing my research, I'm like, wait a second. I love Quentin Johnson. I love the Horned Frogs and Coach Sonny Dykes. Why am I not interested in Chandler Morris? So you know what? He won the job. Oh, I don't have to see Max Dugan, at least for this week, hopefully.
Thank goodness.
Chandler Morris has lots of upside in a very interesting matchup. Love Chandler Morris. If you need an emergency starter, put him on your watch list. I think he's going to have a nice season. If you love Quentin Johnson, you have to be interested in Chandler Morris, and I'm a Sonny Dykes fan, so I'm excited there. Tulane. They have the great matchup, Matt. Maybe one of the only teams worse than my Huskies are the Minutemen of UMass. Tulane, they are a 28-point home favorite against the Minutemen. They should be running the ball. Tajay Spears is a dual threat running back. He can catch the ball. He's their goal line back. He's their guy. I like him in this matchup. I know a lot of people had him as a sleeper, myself included. Make sure you put him in your lineup this week against the Minutemen. We're looking Ali of Marshall, the running back, got hurt. He's basically out. Rasheen Ali, he's out for the year. I've been looking. Who's going to be the starter? It looks like Kalen LeBourne. And I think, Matt, he's a 5th or 6th year college player. He's been around a while, but he's got size. I believe that LeBourne is an interesting player in this game for the Thundering Herd and someone we got to keep an eye on if he's going to get the long-term position, the starting position for the Thundering Herd. And finally, Hawaii got smacked last week. There's no question about it. But if you weren't looking at the box score or staying up late, wide receiver Jonah Pinoc, he had 9 targets, Matt. He had 7 pass receptions for 101 yards. They are playing at home again against Western Kentucky. It's a 67.5 point over-under. We didn't put it on the marvelous matchups because the Hilltoppers are a 16-point favorite. But the Rainbow should be throwing the ball a ton in the second half. If you're going to give me a wide receiver with nearly double-digit targets every week, at least for the short term, I like Jonah Pinoc of the Hawaii Rainbows this week.
All right, here we go. I've identified quarterback Colin Schlee from Kent State. This is a really interesting matchup. Kent State takes on Washington, and I am not sleeping on the Golden Flashes. We'll talk a little bit more about them in the best bet segment, but Schlee steps in to the quarterback role for Kent State. That's been occupied by Dustin Crum. Crum was a little bit of a dual threat player. He could get it done on the ground. He could get it done through the air. And what we've seen in limited sample size from the 6'3", 218-pound quarterback that is now at the helm is much of the same. He only had 24 attempts last year, but he completed 70 of them. He had a touchdown, but he ran the ball 20 times for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think that we are forgetting just how bad Washington looked last year. Now a transition-based offseason, and I really like Colin Schlee as a sleeper pick this week. I'm not scared of playing him against a Power 5 opponent. John, you alluded to it here. Amarion Hampton, he really was the guy from week 1, right, that finally stood out of the North Carolina backfield. All offseason, we were trying to figure out who it would be. Then we had the preseason injury, I should say. And although multiple running backs got the nod last week, it really was Hampton who ran the ball for 101 yards and found the end zone twice. You mentioned it, John. You're backing off of him a little bit because of the matchup, but I think that's what makes him sneaky. I do think it's going to be a close game. I do think at some point North Carolina is going to want to try and slow down the game. And like you mentioned, I do think Drake May is going to struggle a little bit. This is his first real collegiate start. If you think about it, it's Florida A&M, no knock on FAMU, but it's not an FBS program, right? So I think they may try to protect Drake May a little bit by prioritizing Hampton on the ground and in the red zone. At wide receiver, I'm going with Jayden Hazelwood. Cincinnati, Arkansas is quietly a really great matchup, but Cincinnati has lost 3 players in their secondary to the NFL draft. And that was really the foundation of their defense last year. Jayden Hazelwood, a transfer from Oklahoma to Arkansas, really will be playing in as close to the Treylon Burks role as they can get there in Arkansas this year. I think KJ Jefferson is going to prioritize Jayden Hazelwood early and often, and I think Hazelwood by midseason is going to be an auto start, but he's not quite there yet for folks. I like him a lot this week. And then Donovan Edwards, I slid into my flex spot. Yes, Blake Corum will be the main running back for Michigan, but Michigan has a really easy matchup this week, and I expect them to do a lot of rotating here. I think they're going to want to protect Blake Corum over the course of the season, and I think against Colorado State, Donovan Edwards is going to get plenty of action. Plus, don't forget, before the before the Blake Corum injury last year, both Corum and Haskins were splitting time pretty evenly. I think Harbaugh wants to do that again and incorporate Edwards in as that second running back that gets heavy action. So he's sliding under the radar, but I am willing to slide him into my flex spot if I have a lot of tough week 1 matchups. All right, let's go ahead and talk DFS now. We take 2 different approaches to DFS here. John gives us 4 players to build the foundation of a lineup around, and then I give you an example of how you can build out a full lineup. John, this week, because our other providers did not get the slate out in time, we are both talking DraftKings pricing. Go ahead and kick us off here.
Matt, last week, my Fantastic Four rocked. It scored 97.9 points. My cash game lineup went for nearly 200. Please watch my Twitter feed on Saturday morning if there's a change, because injuries in college football happen all the time. But right now, I have a juicy, fantastic 4. Matt, I'm attacking that Houston UTS game, and I'm specifically attacking it with Clayton Tune at the quarterback position. Clayton Tune had an amazing year last year. 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. He also ended up last year, let me see what the total, 154 rushing yards, and he scored twice on the ground. When you're talking about one of the highest over-unders with an explosive offense, and Matt, he's not the most expensive quarterback on the board. He is below guys like Jackson Dart, who might not play. Carson Beck of Georgia. I don't even know why he's not starting. Max Johnson of Texas A&M. Clayton Tune is under 8,000. J.J. McCarthy of Michigan is 8,000. So you look at the range that he's in. He's significantly less than players like Dylan Gabriel, Dorial Thompson-Robinson. So I love Clayton Tune in this matchup. And when I have a quarterback, I put one in the super flex and one in the quarterback most of the time, not always. I usually choose one wide receiver to pair him up with. Matt, I like Matthew Golden throughout the offseason. He was in my top 10 freshmen. I am shocked. He won the starting job at the X position in Dana Holgerson's offense. Matt, he's under $5,000. That is significant savings from Nathaniel Dell. Let me see what Dell is. Dell is the second highest priced wide receiver at $7,800. Golden, the freshman, under $5,000 against the UTSA defense. There's going to be points in this game. I think Matthew Golden wakes up the college football community. I love him here in this match. He's going to get targets. Crossing my fingers, Matt, that they've drawn up a play where he gets over the top and maybe he gets like a 40-yard touchdown in his first game. So I love that. I alluded to it before. Matt, BYU is going to run the football. The Bulls' defense is not good. The BYU offensive line is very good. They are hurting at the wide receiver position. All the notes coming out of training camp, all the BYU beat reporters, the drum is loud for transfer Christopher Brooks. He's standing nicely at the top of the depth chart. We saw what Tyler Algier did last year. Christopher Brooks should smash. He's only 6,100. That is great savings. And then and I'm not doing it because he's my favorite. Maryland should put up over 35 points against Buffalo. They're home. I think they're like 28-point favorites in this game, if my memory serves me. I'm going with Rakim Jarrett, one of my guys, 5,900. This is it's 25,200 remaining. You average $6,300 for your remaining 4 players, Matt. You can load up on Oklahoma. You can go Michigan running backs. This gives you a lot of flexibility. Matt, who do you have in the lineup this week?
Yeah, John, it's interesting. We always mention we don't compare notes ahead of time. We like it to feel organic. And for me, when it came to looking at this slate, I am somebody who is not afraid to pay up for the quarterback position. If the slate demands it, I am an advocate for going and doing that, but it just does not demand it this week, right? You talked about it. Clayton Tune is the best value out there, 7,900. We talked about that being the second highest projected over-under of the week. It's the highest on the slate, and I as well paired it up with Matthew Golden at 4,900. It's too good of a deal, and I have to tell you, I originally plugged in Nathaniel Dell, who is kind of their primary X receiver, but Nathaniel Dell came in at $7,800. So Matthew Golden at value was just much, much better. My other quarterback I plugged in this week was Devin Leary, the quarterback for North Carolina State. North Carolina State is playing East Carolina. that is actually a rivalry game. They play for, I think it's like a barrel or something like that. And East Carolina plays the Wolfpack tough. And Wolfpack have had a little bit of a trouble establishing what their running game is going to look like. So I do think Devin Leary is going to have to throw the ball, and he's going to have to throw the ball a decent amount, and it's going to lead to some pretty good value. I've stacked him up with wide receiver Devin Carter, which as really the X receiver in that offense at $6,000 was just too good of a value to pass up on. Now, John, the free square here this week is Amarion Hampton. I talked about it earlier. I think whether you're excited about Amarion Hampton or not, he's not priced correctly. DraftKings did not adjust for him. He is at just $3,000. If Amarion Hampton is not in your lineup, I'm not sure what you're doing, but you're giving up a lot of value there. So that's the cheap free square. My other running back that I paired him up with is my guy, Zach Charbonnet. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry, John. I know I had to go right away here and go with my guy Charbonnet, but against Bowling Green as 23.5-point favorites, I expect UCLA to prioritize the run early, get ahead, and it wouldn't shock me if Charbonnet has found the end zone twice by halftime. So even if they don't need him in the second half, he should do enough damage off the bat. So that, again, is Clayton Tune at quarterback, 7,900. Zach Charbonnet, 7,900 at running back, paired with Amarion Hampton at 3,000. Devin Carter at 6,000. Matthew Golden at 4,900 at wide receiver. And then we're plugging in at wide receiver, pairing them with Marvin Mims. So that's the wide receiver I'm going to pay up for in this particular lineup. I'm not going to do it with Marvin Mims in every lineup, but Oklahoma is a 30-point favorite against UTEP. I do think that they're going to want to show off Dylan Gabriel, and Marvin Mims is going to be the guy to benefit from that. There are multiple weapons in the Oklahoma offense, so I won't be heavy on Marvin Mims, but I do want to make sure he's in at least one of my lineups. And to round this one out here, I'm going to flex Donovan Edwards. I talked about him earlier, but at just $5,000, I think he's somebody who benefits from playing a lower level team and potentially having more of a rotation-based approach there for the Michigan offense this week. All right, John, let's finish it up here with our best bet segment. All right, our best bets of the week. Each week, me and John identify one pick point spread, one over-under, one money line. These are all games that me and John both actually play for the week, so we're in it with you. Our record last week, we both drew 1-2. All right, I will point out, though, that I had a very bad beat with that FAU game, FAU Charlotte game with Chris Reynolds going down. I thought I had it. And then they put in Willie Taggart Jr. to go for 2 stupid extra points, and he can't get either one of them up 30. So I'm reeling off some bad beats. But, John, overall, 2-4, not a terrible start. The early season's always a little trickier, and I'm ready to get back in the ring here this week. So let's start here with our point spreads, and I'll let you go first. You have Boston College -7 as your point spread All-American bet of the week.
And before we start with the best bets, I just got to digress. Even though I would not start Hampton in a season-long redraft league, completely agree with you, Matt. For $3,000, you have different goals in DFS, and salary is obviously important. I love Hampton for $3,000. My point spread bet, Matt, I'm going to bet against Rutgers for a real long time. I know Shiano's there. I know they're turning it around, but I'm sorry. They're going to play tough. You know, they're better than they were, but they don't have a quarterback, Matt. They can't throw the ball. They can't run the ball. They're going to be tough. They're going to play defense. But Jerkovic is back. Zay Flowers returned to have a monster season. Boston College, I wish it was 6.5 or 6, but I'll give the 7. They're at home. I like Flowers to score twice in this game. I think the Eagles get off to a flying start. I think this game should be like Boston College -10. Rutgers does not have the offensive firepower to stay close. Give me Boston College -7, Matt. Who do you got?
Oh, we're coming in hot. We're coming in hot. Kent State +22.5. Give it to me all day. What are we doing with this Washington pricing? Okay, I understand it's a Power 5 team. Hey, guess what, folks? Do you remember what happened with Washington week 1 last year? They lost to FCS Montana. All right, 22.5 is the point spread. Here's how many points Washington scored in every game last year. 7 points, 10 points, 52, 31, 24, 17, 21, 20, 16, 30, 17, 13. Okay, so in most of the games last year, they wouldn't have covered 22 points if their opponent scored 0. The defense is still rebuilding. They have a new quarterback coming in, a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new everything. And Kent State returns a lot. It's really just plugging in Colin Schlee. I think Kent State is going to go and give the Huskies a run for their money. They're going to cover 22.5. I'm excited about that bet. John, over under here, you're tuning into that Sunday night game, Florida State, LSU, and you're going over 51.5.
Matt, I looked at this a lot, and I know Florida State played FCS, but I think their offense is a little better. It doesn't have to be much improved against LSU. I also think Brian Kelly is going to want to put up 30 points in this game, a minimum, against the Seminoles. This is your Sunday night game on ABC. I can't wait to see it. I think LSU might approach 40. Brian Kelly's going to try to put up points and impress people and get his offense on track. I had this game at a 55 over under. DraftKings earlier today had 51.5. Give me that 51.5. Florida State, LSU on the over, Matt. I think this has sneaky goodness. Hint, hint. Keyshawn Boutte should find the end zone twice this week.
Love it. Love it. This is an easy one for me. We've talked about it a ton, so I won't go into too much detail, but I'm going over 62 Houston UTSA. I think it's going to be a shootout. It always makes me nervous to go over on one of the highest games of the week, but I think these two absolutely demand it. Now with our money line picks here, John had the courage to do what I almost did, but I backed out of. He took Old Dominion plus 230 against the Virginia Tech Hokies.
Matt, I'm a glutton for punishment. Last week, I got pounded by Hawaii because I was tempted by that plus 200. I think it was plus 220 last week. Well, I'm back. I looked at the Monarchs plus 230 at home. And let me see what the point spread is. It's actually a lot less than you think. They are only 6-point dogs against Virginia Tech. Let me repeat that. Virginia Tech is only 6-point favorites. They have a mess in the backfield. The Hokies aren't very good. The Monarchs have a sneaky offense. I'm going to take the juice here. Old Dominion at home shocks the college fantasy football college universe. They win this game against the Hokies. Let's go, Monarchs!
They won't shock the listeners of this podcast because I'm backing John on that one. All he did was do the thing that I didn't have the courage to do. I'll tell you what, though, I love Utah minus 145. Utah's traveling to Florida. I think this is a ridiculous line here. Utah, I'll parlay this game. I'm going to parlay this one minus 145 and then Utah to cover 2.5. Florida is a team that's completely rebuilding. We don't know what we have with Billy Napier. They have essentially no running game here. It's going to all come down to Anthony Richardson. And poor Anthony Richardson has been hyped all offseason, and he has to come out against one of the best defenses west of the Mississippi here with the Utah Utes. The Utah's returning Cam Rising. They're returning Tavion Thompson. They are going to control this game from the start. And I really think that Florida is not going to look competitive in this game. I'd actually pick Utah to win by a touchdown here. So 2.5 is plenty fine for me. And John, that's going to wrap it up here for our week 1 preview. A reminder to everybody that if you are not in the Rookie Big Board Discord, you have to get in here, talk CFF with us, talk college, just get in there for the game day actions. Patreon.com/Rookie Big Board. If you just want the Discord access, it's just $1 a month. $3 a month gets you Devy, Dynasty, all the good rankings. And listen, at the end of the day, folks, you support the production of this great show. As always, we appreciate you checking out this episode of the College Fantasy Football Big Board.